The alarm clock's sharp buzz cut through the pre-dawn silence at exactly 0500 hours, just as it had every morning for the past 3 months. Dorothy Washington's eyes opened immediately, no grogginess, no hesitation. 72 years old, and her body still responded to reveille like a 20-year-old recruit. She sat up in the narrow bed of her small apartment, feet finding the cold hardwood floor with practiced precision. The room was sparse but immaculate. A single dresser, a wooden chair, and a nightstand holding only the alarm clock and a glass of water. No clutter, no unnecessary comfort, just like the barracks had taught her decades ago. Dorothy moved through her morning routine with the methodical grace of someone who had performed these same motions thousands of times. She made her bed with hospital corners so tight a quarter would bounce off the olive green comforter. In the tiny bathroom, she splashed cold water on her weathered brown face and studied her reflection in the cracked mirror. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, dark eyes that had seen too much but still held their fire, shoulders that remained straight despite carrying the weight of 7 decades. Back in the bedroom, she opened the dresser's top drawer and carefully lifted out her husband's Marine Corps ring, suspended on a thin silver chain. The metal was warm from resting against the wood all night. She held it up to catch the morning light filtering through the window, watching it gleam like a small beacon. "Morning, Samuel," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. "Another day in paradise." She fastened the chain around her neck, tucking the ring beneath her simple navy dress, the same dress she'd pressed the night before, hanging it carefully on the back of the chair. Everything had its place. Everything had its purpose. Dorothy walked to the kitchen and poured herself exactly half a cup of black coffee from the pot she'd prepared the night before. She drank it standing at the small window that overlooked Main Street, watching Millbrook slowly wake up. A few early commuters hurried past. The streetlights flickered off one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. 3 months she'd been here now, and the town still felt foreign. Not unwelcoming exactly, but not home either. Nothing had felt like home since Samuel died 2 years ago, leaving her alone in their cramped apartment outside Camp Lejeune. The military pension was enough to live on, but not enough to stay in North Carolina where everything reminded her of him. So she'd packed her few belongings, stuck a pin in a map, and ended up here in this forgotten corner of Alabama where nobody knew Sergeant Major Dorothy Washington or the battles she'd fought. She finished her coffee, rinsed the cup, and placed it in the dish drainer. Then she retrieved her purse from the kitchen table, a simple black leather bag that had seen better days but still served its purpose. Inside, nestled between her wallet and reading glasses, was a photograph in a plastic sleeve. She pulled it out and ran her thumb across the surface. The image showed a younger version of herself in dress blues, standing at attention beside Samuel on their wedding day. Both of them looked so serious, so proud, so certain that the world would bend to their will if they just stood straight enough, saluted sharp enough, served long enough. 30 years, she murmured, sliding the photo back into its place. 30 years of proving we belonged. Dorothy slung her purse over her shoulder and walked to the front door. She paused there, hand on the knob, and performed her daily ritual. A quick scan of the apartment to ensure everything was secure. Windows locked, stove off, lights off. Old habits from a lifetime of temporary quarters and uncertain deployments. The morning air was crisp as she stepped outside, carrying the promise of another hot Alabama day. She locked the door behind her and began her 6-block walk to Mel's Diner, her sensible shoes clicking against the sidewalk in a steady rhythm. Left, right, march tempo even in civilian clothes. As she walked, Dorothy's eyes automatically cataloged her surroundings, the way they'd been trained to do in hostile territory. The empty lot where teenagers sometimes gathered, the alley between the hardware store and the barber shop, the parked cars and their license plates. Most were local, but she noted the few out-of-state tags, filing the information away without conscious thought. The diner came into view as she rounded the corner onto Main Street. Mel's Place, the faded sign read, with a cartoon coffee cup that had lost most of its paint. It wasn't much to look at, a converted railroad car with a few booths and a counter, but the coffee was strong and the owner minded his own business. That was enough for Dorothy. She approached the familiar red door, her hand already reaching for the handle. Through the window, she could see movement inside, earlier customers than usual. Her steps slowed slightly, some instinct making her pause. But it was Tuesday morning, and she'd been coming here every day for 3 months. Routine was important. Routine was what kept you grounded when everything else fell apart. Dorothy straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and reached for the door handle, unaware that this ordinary Tuesday morning was about to become anything but ordinary. The bell above the door chimed as Dorothy stepped inside, and immediately she knew something was wrong. The familiar warmth of Mel's diner felt different, charged with an electricity that made the hair on her arms stand up. Her eyes swept the room in a practiced assessment, cataloging threats the way she'd been trained to do in Fallujah. 5 young men occupied the center booth, their voices loud and crude, Confederate flag patches sewn prominently on their denim jackets. Empty beer bottles cluttered their table despite the early hour. The usual morning crowd, retirees nursing coffee and reading newspapers, was nowhere to be seen. Only an elderly white couple sat hunched in the corner booth, their breakfast untouched, eyes fixed on their plates. Behind the counter, Mel wiped the same spot over and over with a dish rag, his weathered face pale and drawn. When he saw Dorothy, something flickered in his eyes. Warning, maybe, or apology. The largest of the young men, a thick-necked blonde with hate tattooed across his knuckles, looked up as the door closed behind her. His pale eyes narrowed, and a slow smile spread across his face like oil on water. Well, he drawled, his voice carrying the lazy menace of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Looks like we got ourselves a problem, boys. The others turned to stare, their conversation dying. Dorothy felt their eyes on her like physical weight, but she kept walking toward the counter, her posture military straight, her face composed. 30 years of service had taught her that showing fear was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. "Morning, Mel," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Coffee, please." Black. The blonde man, Travis, she heard one of his companions call him, slid out of the booth with deliberate slowness. "Hold up there, Granny. I don't think you heard me right." Dorothy turned to face him, her hands relaxed at her sides, weight balanced on both feet. Combat stance, though she doubted anyone here would recognize it. "I heard you fine, son. I'm just choosing not to respond to ignorance." Travis's face flushed red. "Ignorance? You got some nerve, coming into our establishment like you own the place." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the stale beer on his breath. "This here's a whites-only diner, and your kind ain't welcome." The words hit her like a slap, not because they were unexpected, but because it was 2024 and she was still hearing them. Dorothy's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained level. "Your establishment? I wasn't aware you owned this place, Travis." His eyes widened slightly at her use of his name. She'd been listening, cataloging information like the intelligence officer she'd once been. "Don't matter who owns it. What matters is keeping the riffraff out." Behind the counter, Mel's hands shook as he poured coffee into a white ceramic mug. "Travis, maybe you boys should—" "Shut up, old man," Travis snapped without taking his eyes off Dorothy. "This don't concern you." The elderly couple in the corner booth suddenly stood, the man throwing a $5 bill on the table. They hurried toward the door, not making eye contact with anyone. The woman whispered, "Excuse me," as she squeezed past Dorothy, her voice barely audible. Dorothy watched them go, understanding their fear but disappointed by their silence. How many times had good people chosen safety over standing up? How many times had evil triumphed because decent folks looked the other way? "See that?" Travis gestured toward the departing couple. "Even they know better than to eat with your kind. So why don't you take your black ass back where you came from before things get unpleasant?" Dorothy's military training kicked into high gear. 5 hostels, ages approximately 20 to 25. The leader was the biggest threat, aggressive, unpredictable, likely armed. The others were followers, dangerous in a pack but probably less committed to violence. Multiple exit routes. Front door, kitchen door, possibly a back exit through the kitchen. Potential weapons, Coffee pot, kitchen knives, broken glass. But this wasn't a battlefield in Iraq. This was a diner in Alabama, and she was a 72-year-old woman who just wanted her morning coffee. "I'll have that coffee now, Mel," she said, moving toward the counter. Travis stepped sideways, blocking her path. "I don't think you're hearing me, Grandma. Time to go." Dorothy stopped, looked up at him. He had at least 6 inches and 60 pounds on her, and spoke with the quiet authority of someone who'd commanded Marines in combat. "Son, I've been drinking coffee in this diner every morning for 3 months. I intend to continue doing so. Now step aside." The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. Travis's friends were watching now, waiting to see if their leader would back down to an elderly black woman. Dorothy could see the calculation in his eyes, the need to maintain face warring with some deeper uncertainty. "You got a lot of mouth for someone in your position," Travis said. But there was something different in his voice now, less certain. "Maybe it's time someone taught you some respect." He reached out and grabbed her arm. The moment Travis's fingers closed around Dorothy's arm, the diner fell silent except for the hum of the coffee machine and the tick of the wall clock. His grip was firm but not yet painful, a warning, a test to see how she'd respond. Dorothy looked down at his hand, then back up at his face with the kind of calm that comes from facing down enemy fire. "Remove your hand." Her voice carried no fear, no pleading, just a simple command delivered with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Travis's grip tightened instead. "Or what, Granny? You gonna call the police? File a complaint?" He laughed, and his friends joined in, the sound harsh and ugly in the small space. "This is our town. Our rules." The other 4 had risen from their booth now, forming a loose semicircle around Dorothy. She catalogued each face. The redhead with nervous eyes, the thin one with prison tattoos snaking up his neck, the baby-faced kid who couldn't be more than 19, and the stocky one with dead eyes who worried her most. "Your town." Dorothy's voice remained steady. "Funny. I don't recall seeing your names on any deeds or tax records." Travis's face darkened. "You think you're smart, don't you? Coming in here with your uppity attitude, thinking you're better than us." "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Dorothy replied. "But I know I'm not less than anyone either. That's called dignity, son. You might want to look it up." The baby-faced kid, Danny, she'd heard them call him, shifted uncomfortably. His eyes darted between Travis and Dorothy, uncertainty flickering across his features. Dorothy noticed the hesitation immediately. "Dignity," Travis spat. "You people wouldn't know dignity if it bit you on the ass. You're nothing but welfare queens and criminals, dragging down everything decent folks try to build." Dorothy felt the familiar fire rise in her chest, the same anger that had sustained her through decades of fighting for respect, for recognition, for the simple right to exist without justification. But she'd learned long ago that anger without discipline was just noise. "You know what I see when I look at you boys?" she said, her voice carrying across the diner like a sermon. "I see fear. Fear that the world is changing, that your daddy's promises about being special just for being born white aren't worth much anymore. So you come here, to this little diner, to feel big by making an old woman feel small." The redhead's nervous laughter died in his throat. Even the stocky one with dead eyes seemed to be listening. "But here's what you don't understand," Dorothy continued, her gaze moving from face to face. "You can't diminish someone who knows their worth. You can't break someone who's already been tested by fire." "Shut up," Travis snarled, his grip on her arm tightening. "Just shut your mouth and get out." Behind the counter, Mel finally found his voice. "Travis, maybe you boys should take it easy. She's just an old lady wanting coffee." "Stay out of this, Mel," Travis snapped without turning around. "Unless you want us to find somewhere else to spend our money." Mel's face went pale, and he stepped back, his moment of courage evaporating. Dorothy felt a stab of disappointment but not surprise. Fear made cowards of good people every day. She turned her attention to Danny, the youngest of the group. His discomfort was growing more obvious by the minute, his eyes avoiding hers. "What's your name, son?" she asked gently. "Don't talk to him," Travis ordered. But Danny looked up despite himself. Danny, he mumbled. Danny. Dorothy nodded. That's a good name. Strong name. Tell me, Danny, is this who you want to be? Is this the man your mother raised? Danny's face flushed red. You don't know nothing about my mother. I know she didn't carry you for 9 months and raise you for 19 years, so you could spend your Tuesday morning terrorizing old ladies in diners. Dorothy's voice was firm but not unkind. We all make choices, Danny. Every day, every moment, we choose who we want to be. Right now, you're choosing to be part of this. But you don't have to. Shut up. Travis yanked on her arm, hard enough to make her stumble slightly. Nobody asked for your life lessons, you old. Dorothy's training kicked in like muscle memory. In one fluid motion, she pivoted on her left foot, used Travis's grip against him to maintain balance, and stepped into his space with the kind of presence that had once commanded respect from hardened Marines in combat zones. Let go. Now. The words came out with such authority, such absolute command, that Travis actually loosened his grip for a moment. Dorothy straightened to her full height, not tall, but somehow filling more space than her small frame should allow. I served this country for 30 years, son, she said, her voice carrying the weight of every battle fought, every order given, every young soldier she trained and sent into harm's way. I've earned the right to drink coffee wherever I choose. The diner fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Charged. Waiting. Travis's laugh was sharp and mocking. 30 years? Right. And I'm the President of the United States. He tightened his grip again, but Dorothy didn't flinch. You people love making up stories about being heroes. The words hit her like a physical blow, not because they hurt, but because she'd heard them before. Different voices, different decades, same poison. 1972. Paris Island. Drill instructor Sergeant Mills standing over her bunk, his face twisted with disgust. What makes you think the Corps wants your kind, recruit? This ain't no place for colored girls playing dress-up. Dorothy's voice remained steady in the present. M16A1 rifle. 7 pounds, 6 ounces unloaded. Effective range 460 meters. I could field strip one blindfolded in under 2 minutes. Travis's smirk faltered slightly. Anyone could look that up. The sound incoming mortars make isn't something you look up, Dorothy continued, her eyes distant for a moment. It's a whistle that starts high and drops low, like a tea kettle falling from the sky. You learn to count the seconds between the whistle and impact. 3 seconds means you dive. 2 seconds means you pray. 1975. Da Nang Air Base. The whistle of incoming fire cutting through the humid night. Private Washington. She wasn't Dorothy then, just Washington. Rolling into a foxhole as shrapnel tore through the air where she'd been standing. The Marine next to her, a kid from Ohio named Peterson, didn't make it to cover in time. Danny shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado cracking. You were really in Vietnam? Danny. Shut up, Travis snapped. But the young man's curiosity was stronger than his fear. What was it like? Danny asked, ignoring his leader's glare. Dorothy looked at him, seeing past the Confederate patch to the uncertainty underneath. Hot, scary, necessary. She paused. I was 19 when I shipped out. Same age as you, I'd guess. 1978. Camp Lejeune. Sergeant Washington training new recruits. Most of them white boys from small towns who'd never taken orders from a black woman. Teaching them to survive, to fight, to come home alive. Some of them calling her names behind her back, but following her orders because she knew what she was doing. I rose through the ranks because I was good at my job, Dorothy said, her voice carrying across the diner. Not because of quotas or handouts, but because when bullets started flying, Marines needed leaders who could keep them alive. Color doesn't matter much when you're under fire. The stocky gang member with dead eyes spoke for the first time. My uncle was in Nam. Said it was hell. It was, Dorothy agreed. But we did our duty. All of us. Black, white, brown. We bled the same color for the same flag. 1985. Beirut. Staff Sergeant Washington pulling wounded Marines from a bombed barracks, her dress blues torn and bloody. A young corporal, white kid from Alabama, gripping her hand as medics worked on his shattered leg. "Thank you, Sergeant Major," he whispered. "Thank you for not leaving me." Travis was losing control of the situation and he knew it. "Enough with the war stories, Grandma. Even if you were in the military, that was 50 years ago. This is now." "Some things don't change," Dorothy replied. "Bullies are still bullies. Cowards are still cowards. And people who stand up to both are still necessary." 2022. The funeral home in Jacksonville. Samuel's flag-draped coffin, the honor guard's crisp salute, the bugler playing taps. 35 years of marriage to her fellow Marine, gone in a heartbeat. The move to Millbrook afterward, seeking peace in her golden years. "My husband died 2 years ago," she said quietly. "Samuel Washington, gunnery sergeant, retired. We came here looking for a quiet place to spend our retirement. He didn't make it, but I'm still here, still standing." Danny's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am." Travis jerked his head toward the young man. "What the hell is wrong with you?" But something had shifted in the room. Dorothy could feel it, the way she'd felt the tide turning in a dozen different battles. This confrontation represented everything she'd fought against her entire life. The assumption that she didn't belong, that her service didn't matter, that her dignity was negotiable. She looked Travis directly in the eyes. "I've faced down enemy soldiers, son. I've buried friends and trained warriors. I've served in places where people would kill me just for wearing this uniform." She touched the chain around her neck where Samuel's ring rested. "You think 5 boys in a diner are going to make me back down now?" The bell above the door chimed again, cutting through the tension like a knife. A young black woman entered with her teenage daughter, both dressed neatly, the mother in scrubs, the girl in a school uniform. They took 2 steps inside before the atmosphere hit them like a wall. The woman's eyes swept the scene. 5 white men surrounding an elderly black woman. The palpable hostility, Mel cowering behind the counter. Her protective instincts kicked in immediately, and she pulled her daughter closer. Well, Travis said, finally releasing Dorothy's arm as he turned toward the newcomers. "Looks like it's raining monkeys today. You'll need to turn around and find somewhere else to eat." The young mother's face hardened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Travis stepped toward them, his gang following. "This establishment don't serve your kind. Time to move along." Dorothy moved without hesitation, positioning herself between Travis and the family. "That's enough." The mother looked at Dorothy with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, but we can handle this ourselves." "I'm sure you can," Dorothy replied, not taking her eyes off Travis. "But nobody should have to handle it alone." Travis's face twisted with rage. "Oh, so now we got ourselves a little civil rights meeting? This is perfect." The teenage girl pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly as she started recording. "Mom, I'm getting this. Put that damn phone away," the redhead shouted, lunging toward her. "Maya, no," her mother said, but the girl held the phone higher. "I'm not doing anything illegal," Maya said, her voice stronger than her trembling hands suggested. "This is a public place." Dorothy felt a surge of pride watching the young woman stand her ground. "What's your name, honey?" "Maya. Maya Johnson. This is my mom, Sarah. I'm Dorothy Washington. And you're very brave, Maya." Sarah stepped forward, her nurse's training evident in her calm assessment of the situation. "I work at Millbrook General. I've treated half this town, including some of you boys when you've come in drunk and stupid." The stocky gang member shifted uncomfortably, apparently one of Sarah's former patients. "That's different," Travis snarled. "You were doing your job. This is our space." "Your space." Sarah's voice carried the authority of someone who dealt with difficult patients and life-or-death situations. "Since when do you own Mel's Diner?" Behind the counter, Mel's internal struggle was written across his face. Dorothy could see him wrestling with himself, his father's voice echoing in his memory. "Son, I served with colored boys in Korea. Good soldiers. Brave soldiers. Some of the best men I ever knew died for this country, and their skin was darker than midnight. Don't you ever let anyone tell you a man's worth is measured by his color. Dorothy lifted the chain from her neck, Samuel's Marine Corps ring glinting under the diner lights. This belonged to my husband, Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Washington, she said, placing it gently on the counter. He gave it to me when he retired. After 30 years of proving courage has no color, honor has no gender, and service rises above prejudice. The room fell silent. Even Travis stared at the ring, shaken. The door burst open. Police Chief Robert Hayes stepped in, assessing quickly. His eyes landed on Dorothy, and recognition cracked his composure. Sergeant Major Washington? Dorothy squinted. Corporal Hayes? Detroit. Yes, ma'am. His respect was palpable. The gang looked confused as their chief treated Dorothy with reverence. These boys harassing you? He demanded. Dorothy could have pressed charges. Justice would have been easy. But instead, she lifted the ring again. They don't need jail, they need education. They need to understand what this ring stands for. She gestured to the counter. Sit, Danny. If you're willing to listen. Slowly, he did. Service means defending people who won't defend you back, Dorothy said. Believing in ideals even when they're imperfect. I enlisted in '72, when women weren't welcome and black leaders weren't expected. I stayed, because courage isn't about hate. It's about standing for those who can't stand for themselves. Danny whispered, I don't know how to change. Start small, she told him. With dignity, with questioning the hate you've been taught. When she left, the diner knew exactly who she was. 1 month later, Dorothy returned. The diner was transformed, diverse voices filling seats once divided. Maya's video had gone viral, her story spreading far beyond Millbrook. Danny now worked at the diner, attending college and volunteering with veterans. Travis had left town. Sarah and Maya thrived, and even Mel found courage. Dorothy unfolded a letter. Dear Sergeant Major Washington, I'm 18. After seeing your story, I've decided to enlist. You showed me courage isn't just war. It's choosing what's right, every day. Dorothy smiled, sipping her coffee. Change wasn't instant. It was built one morning at a time.